Water has repeated its call for residents to reduce their water consumption. They say that average provision to municipalities has increased by 600 million litres per day since the beginning of spring. The utility recently had to reduce its supply to various areas in Gauteng, and they say that reservoir levels continue to decrease. As a result, water restrictions will be implemented from 8 p.m. tonight. Let's find out more from the Rand Water spokesperson, Makenosi Maroo. Thank you very much for your time this evening. I'd like to start with a question on many people's minds. If the Vaal Dam is 92% full, explain to us how come our reservoirs are empty, or how the levels are decreasing to such a point that water restrictions are necessary. Makenosi, I think you might have muted yourself accidentally. If you could just unmute yourself.
There we go. I'm back. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. There we go. Now we can hear you.
Yes. All right. Thank you. The Vaal Dam is full. We don't have a problem with the Vaal Dam. The problem is huge consumption. So as water comes in from the Vaal Dam into our reservoir, water goes out quickly. So we don't have any reserves in our reservoir. We cannot afford to have an empty reservoir. As a result, we're trying to protect our reservoir. We are now introducing new measures. Remember, last week we implemented stage 2 restrictions. Now we are moving into another phase.
Is there also a problem related to load shedding with the ability of the reservoirs to receive and to pump water out to customers?
To a larger extent, because remember, for us to pump water into high-lying areas and low-lying areas, we need to have power for us to pump water. So we do have power trips from time to time. Obviously, at our water treatment plants, the primary and secondary, we have an agreement with Eskom not to load shed us. But with our tertiary pump stations, we do have an issue with Eskom. But also the big issue is the high consumption of water.
Let's talk about that consumption. What is the current consumption per household per day on average, and what would you like it to be?
Maybe let me give you a figure of what South Africans, more especially end users in Gauteng, are using per day. Each person is using around 300 litres against a world average of 173 litres per person per day. So that gives you an indication of where we are with regards to consumption.
Okay, so that's quite significantly more. However, Gauteng has been experiencing heat wave conditions. Have you seen that contributing to the demand for water?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Remember, we just moved out of the winter season, autumn. Now we are into spring. So people are using water for their lawns, obviously for their gardens. They're using sprinklers to wash their pavements and their cars, filling up their swimming pools. So we are seeing a huge consumption. So we are still appealing to consumers to reduce consumption.
So these restrictions that are kicking in from 8 p.m. tonight, tell us exactly what they entail, because there's varying sources of information. Some municipalities have said between 6 in the morning and 6 in the evening you can't water your garden, but the rest of the time it's fine. So there seems to be some confusion as to exactly what is being advised by Rand Water.
At the moment, let me just give you an indication. The minimum level of a reservoir is 60%. We are sitting between 30 and 38%. So we are concerned about the consumption. So we're saying to consumers, for now, if you have to water your garden, do it between sunset and sunrise. That's what we are appealing. But we're also saying use water for basic necessities up until we recover, up until our reservoirs recover.
Okay. In terms of the throttling of the water, by what percentage will water availability to customers be reduced so as to try and force them to use less?
The first stage that we introduced, which was stage 2, it's 30%. So we are restricting by 30%. But over and above that restriction, we are now introducing the flow control management system. The system will ensure that rainwater takes full control of water supply. This means we no longer rely on end users to reduce consumption.
So what does that essentially mean for households across Gauteng? Will they suddenly not have any water at all? Or will they have a trickle but not full flow? What is the situation likely to be? And how long will that persist for?
Right. It is very difficult to say exactly what the situation will be like for each household. Remember, as Rainwater, we are a bulk water service provider. We provide municipalities with water. So what we're doing is we are just restricting the flow of water from our reservoir into a municipal reservoir, for example, a city of Johannesburg. So we are restricting the flow. So as water comes in, we are restricting the water so that a reservoir can recover. And for the following day, we will have water. So we're restricting from 8 o'clock up until 6 o'clock, when obviously it's not too busy, people are sleeping, people are using less water. So around that time, we're trying to conserve as much water as we can.
And in terms of industries that are reliant on water, we know that our businesses, especially production, play such a major role in trying to grow our economy. To limit their water is certainly going to have an economic impact. Have businesses been cushioned to a certain degree, and while residents, ordinary citizens, are expected to reduce their capacity?
I'm aware that some businesses are negotiating with various municipalities in terms of their ration for water. So I know that there are negotiations and engagements around that matter.
Are there also engagements with Eskom to try and limit the impact of load shedding on the ability to pump water effectively, as you said, to high-lying areas in Gauteng, so that, like hospitals have been cushioned to a certain degree from the effects of load shedding, that would also be of effect on Rand Water, seeing as that you also provide an essential service?
Oh, yes, we had that engagement with Eskom. As I indicated, we had an agreement that our primary and secondary pump stations will not be load shedded at all. It will be the tertiary. We had to make a concession. So tertiary pump stations are affected by load shedding, but we do have generators in place. But obviously, it takes time for a generator to kick in and pump water. So we did have that discussion with Eskom.
Looking at the bigger picture of Gauteng's water security, we're sitting with a situation where we've got a dam that's 92% full. Many consumers might be quite relaxed about the access to water in the long term for the moment. But if you're trying to communicate to consumers now that usage needs to be reduced by almost half, what does that say about our water security going into the next year or two, and perhaps even longer term of 5 years?
It's a concerning matter. Remember, we're a dry country. I think we are number 33 on the list. So we don't have water in abundance in this country. I think we also need to realize that as end users, that we need to use water sparingly. In terms of investing in infrastructure, it's a long-term project that Rainwater is looking at, and I know that other municipalities are also looking into building reservoirs.
Well, thank you very much for your time this evening. As we said there, from 8 p.m. tonight, water restrictions will be implemented to try and get consumers to reduce capacity. That was Rand Water spokesperson Makenosi Maroo giving us an update there.